Okay, today I'm going to talk about basically, I went forward in the book a bit. I read a few more pages. It was the book of How We Decide, and before the part of the book I talked about was about addictions with dopamine, gambling, and Parkinson's. And now I'm going to be talking about the way we perceive luck. And it's still on dopamine neurons. I didn't actually go that much further in the book, but it's actually very thought provoking, the examples they talk about, which is why I stopped and decided to talk about it. Also, because it's not an audiobook, so it's a bit, it takes a lot more attention to actually read. So the first thing is they give a few different examples, which is one, the belief of hot streaks for sport in athletes, for example. So in say basketball, the fans, I think they said, believed in hot hands or hot streaks, which basically means you're on fire, you're in the zone, and like in a you're in the state where you're going to be landing all your shots basically. And the players believed it, the fans believed it. I think it was like 91% of the fans believed in this idea that if you're on a streak, then your next shots are more likely to go in. And they did the study, they looked at the numbers, and it was opposite of true. In fact, if they believed they were on a streak and that they were on fire, basically, or whatever, the probability of their next shot going in goes down. So, for example, let's say they have a 46% score rate overall. And then you look at the times when you have four successes in a row, and then you see how many threes in a row you have. So out of the threes in a row, given that you've scored 3 times in a row, your probability of hitting the fourth one is lower than your average probability total, which just means that when you're on a streak, your success rate goes down, or something like that. I think there are some cases to be said about how the probability distribution actually works when you come with this given thing. But essentially, it's an independent result, and when you're overconfident, you take more risky plays and so on, which I still think maps out. I think the exact percentages sound a little bit skewed because of I think it can be looked at another way, but I think that it is still true and valid that the perception of streaks is a misconception, and the book's point still stands. And so like even the coaches didn't believe it, whatever. So they tested it with multiple different players, and yeah, okay. So the idea is basically when you see someone who's on a streak, you believe that it's a pattern and that the pattern will continue, which is false. And the reason for this belief is because of the way our dopamine neurons fire. That is to say, I'm going to go with a few more examples first before I actually go with my personal experiences and anecdotes to actually elaborate the point. The next one is the rats so they had a T-shaped path or whatever, and the experiment was they would put the rats in, and basically they would put food at the end of either the left or the right. And it was random, but the die roll was a little bit skewed so that it would be on the left 60% of the time and on the right 40% of the time. And after a while, the rat would just go left every single time, and it would just wait. And it was okay with missing some of the time because it went with the highest probability result. And when they repeated this test with students, so undergraduate students, what happened was that the students would look for a pattern because they weren't told that it was random. They were just told that, to look for the food or something like that, basically. And because the students were obsessed with looking for a pattern, they would, because of our advanced dopamine circuits, as the author puts it, because the way we look for rewards, the way we get addicted to gambling, all of these things are due because of the complexities of our dopamine system, which are not supportive for actually pure random, because it was designed in a setting where you can actually find and improve your heuristics for obtaining results, where you can discover patterns and actions that are more likely to give you good results. And because it's not pure random, the world, generally speaking, isn't pure random. If you discover, that if you go in this direction at this time of day, you're less likely to encounter predators and more likely to encounter prey or whatever, and you repeat that action, you're more likely to survive or something. So, point is, it was developed in a world that wasn't meant to be to be engaging in pure random activities where higher probability results, higher probability benefits, patterns are there out there to be discovered. And so the students would look for pattern, and in the end, the students had a success rate of about 52%, whereas the rats would just end up going left every time and have a success rate of 60%. Okay. The third example is... actually, there is no third example, actually. So basically, we pursue random and unexpected rewards. The other example I had... so the other thing is, with the dopamine circuits, it's if we find a pattern that is consistently rewarding, we don't find it rewarding anymore because it's a pattern, and it goes from the path seeking to the habit forming part of our brain. So we don't feel pleasure from it anymore. So now it's just part of our habit, and now we look for something new. So that's why gambling works to keep us in, because if we had, let's say there was a gambling game where it wasn't just luck, right? It's mostly, for example, poker, right? Let's say you are good at poker, and you go through a set of rules in your head, and you go in and you just go through a set of actions, and you know exactly how to win most of the time, and you make money and go home. You perform these actions, and you're not in it for the thrill and ups and downs of gambling. Now you're there for a habitual skill-based formula, right? So it's completely different. You're not doing it to gamble. You're doing it like it's a completely different experience. So here's my actual example, which is this is what I connected it to. When I played Elder Scrolls Legends, for example, and I played essentially Slay Scout, and just these decks that don't need a very particular set of circumstances to align for me to actually be able to do my thing and win. It was very difficult to pull off. It needed a lot of factors to come together. And even when it came together, it wasn't like there was no counterplay. It was just I managed to achieve the thing that I want. And what happens is I didn't actually notice my win rate. I just complained about losing and felt bad, but I didn't actually go, yeah, this doesn't work. And the reason for that is because as the factors come together, right? Let's say, the first factor is in my example, I was playing Slay Scout. Okay. So maybe at the start, my opponent doesn't kill me. I'm like, okay, we're getting a bit closer. And then, I get to kill some of his units with my Venom Tongue or whatever. I get some free ramp, I get a bit closer. And I have this feeling that, it's going to continue. I'm going to win, right? I'm going to get what I want. I'm going to get the thing that is rewarding, which in the other example would be the long streaks, the players with the long streaks, because that's what's exciting for the players. Because here's what happens is you see 3 streaks, you get excited, you go, is he going to make the 4th one? He makes the 4th one. And then and then it's exciting. It's an exciting game because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how long the streak is going to continue, and then you remember that experience, and then you look at another game and you remember these very exciting moments where they go 3, 4, 5. You remember cheering for them and seeing when it's going to fall, and eventually it fails, and you go, yeah, that was quite the streak. That was impressive, whatever. And you remember these moments throughout, but you don't go, okay, well, how many of the times out of the times that he got 3 did he get 4? Like, you don't think about it that way. You just wait for the next time that someone gets a streak. You just go, oh, well, he didn't make 4, whatever. Whereas if he makes 4, you're just cheering, right? So it's like the dopamine is high, which means it's signaling that there's a pattern, which is how dopamine works. It's like you repeat it. So when you get the unexpected reward, the dopamine's like, okay, there's something here. Look for more of this. And when you get the expected, when you don't get the unexpected reward, your brain goes, okay, well, we got the dopamine last time, so that means there's something there. So let's just keep going. Where me playing Ram Scout, Slay Scout was basically just gambling, and like the getting it off was like the long streak, and I go, okay, well, streaks work. Anyways, so I'll give you another example. It's very self-affirming because okay, here's the thing. If you go this when they have streaks, it continues. When they fail the streak, when the streak stops, you don't write it off as false. You just say, oh, that wasn't the one. And like you jump on the wagon when there's like 2 or 3 and you start counting. And if it fails, you go, oh, but he had a streak of 3. So here's my example. I had an interaction with Lateralis, which was when I was on Team Rank Star in practice. And most of the time I just practiced with Alex, but this time we were talking about Scout. And this was back when Scout was actually good. Like, the Drain Vitality Uprising Scout was actually good for a while. Like, it did die down later, but because it got some nerfs, and aggro decks were getting better, whatever. But there was a period where it was good, and this was the period where it was good. And what happened was Lateralis had a very negative view of the Scout deck because he was like, oh, it's just gambling. You either get level 3 Drain Vitality and win, or you don't, and you lose. And I was like, okay, but like a lot of the time you win without level 3 Drain Vitality, and there are times when you lose with level 3 Drain Vitality. The first level 3 Drain Vitality is actually bad. It's the second one that's good, because the first one takes the investment, but the second one doesn't. It's instantly good. And he goes, okay, yeah, I mean, I know the second one's good, but like it's just a coin flip. And I'm like, okay. So we watched him play a game, and he was just playing for Drain Vitality. Like he was losing on the board. He just kept playing like camels, looking for level 3 DV, just going, oh yeah, I'm just gonna get level 3 DV, or I'm not. It's either gonna save me or it's not. And he basically went all in. And I looked at the game, and I walked him through it. I was just like, if you just don't play for level 3 DV and you just play the game, like. And you widen your vision and look for things that aren't level 3 Drain Vitality and just play cards that win you the game, you would just win the game. Like, and he was like, and he looked at like I walked him through every single step, every single turn, because we recorded it. And he was like, okay, yeah, if I play this differently, this would have happened. If I play this differently, this would have happened. If I play this differently, this would have happened. And if I just didn't look for level 3 Drain Vitality, that game would have been easy fucking clap. Like, this guy would have had no counterplay. And I was like, I mean, there you go. So here's the thing. If you're focused only on the streaks, then you don't actually like your vision is just too narrow. So for like if when you do get the level 3 Grand Vitality, you have the gambling win, and then it's self-assuring because if you're under the assumption that it's a binary result you're gambling on, then you're only going to see those two outcomes. Okay. The other example is, well, this isn't an example, but this is a connection I decided to make, is the finite versus infinite games, and which is what Simon talks about. So if you have the finite game, is when you have, defined players, defined objectives, and you play to win. And the infinite game is, there are no defined players, no defined objective, and the objective is to stay in the game, and you drop out. Players drop out when they run out of the will or the resources to play on. Then you look at it as so you see the finite games, which is you look for the patterns, you keep changing, you go maybe this doesn't work, I'm gonna change the directions, maybe this doesn't work. Whereas the infinite game is you look for the little things that should need to be done, and you, rather than constantly looking for something new that may work or may not work, to look for the jackpots, right? In business, for example, or in business, which is like maybe this product doesn't work, maybe I'll try this product, maybe I'll try this product, and in this example. And then it's like, or you can go, okay, what are the problems with this product? What are the problems with our processes? What are the how can we improve the efficiency of our marketing? How can we improve this? How can we improve this? And the difference is that the infinite game doesn't have these kinds of highs where you sell this product and you have this burst of sales, for example, which is like gambling. And it gives you kind of this stimulus of self-affirmation, kind of. Or trading versus long-term investment, which they talk about, and statistically speaking, for the majority of people, if you just put your money in a place that's safe long-term, it's going to outperform, like I think it was like the S&P 500, it outperforms the most active investors or something, which I think is actually true. It makes sense to me. I've heard it in a number of places. I don't know how precise it is or how accurate it is, but in general, it makes sense. As a rule of thumb, at least. Which, because the thing is, when you get it right, it's the kind where if you get it right, you say, oh yeah, I'm a good investor. And when you get it wrong, you say bad market conditions, right? It's like you have... That's kind of how these people look at it. And I know because I looked at my games that way, where it's like, if I win, I'm amazing. And if I lose, unlucky. But that's not how that works. The level of influence that the luck and skill have on it is close to constant. Obviously, sometimes you're unlucky, sometimes you're lucky. But it's not just determined by what the result is. You can't, right? It's like you can't just say the result determines how much. Like if you have a pie that's divided by the factors of outcome, that is not dependent. And like the division of the pie is determined before the binary result of the outcome. Okay. The next thing they mention, which is pretty closely related, which is when someone experiences a loss, or what they perceive to be a loss, they make riskier decisions. For example, let's say you lose a game, and you go, okay, well, I need to win it back. Or let's say you lose a bet. Well, now you feel, okay, well, I need to... And when I say bet, I don't mean like poker, the skilled poker player. I mean like actual bet, where you just don't know what the outcome is. Okay. You lose a bet, then you feel that you need to recover your loss. So you're willing to take riskier actions, succeeding a loss. And the example they used was the Deal or No Deal television show, which is to say, when someone, they opened a very high result, and there was one good result left out of maybe 4, and the banker offers them $100,000, and they go, okay, I have a 1 in 4 chance to get $500,000. If I open this and it's not the $500,000 chest, then that means that his offer is going to go up. So I have a 3 out of 4 chance that his offer goes up. He offers me $100,000. Okay, well, I have a 3 out of 4 chance that offer goes up. Okay, so I take this bet, and I mean, okay, let's say 1 in 10. There's 10 chests, and there's 1 out of 10 of them is 500,000 or whatever. It doesn't matter. And I open the $500,000, and the bet drops. Okay, and the offer drops. Okay, so he goes. If rationally speaking, the offer that comes now. Okay, so first of all, what the show does is, when this happens, their offer is a bit better, like numerically, in terms of the remaining pool. So it's a bit above the EV of the remaining chests, the average EV. So they offer him something, and logically speaking, he should take the offer and cut his losses, because mathematically he's only going to lose more. Okay, but the thing is, in this position, the majority of contestants will always continue. And the reason is simply because they feel that they have to recoup as much of their losses as possible, because they feel that they just lost the money. Because, well, technically they did, because if they took the offer, then they would have had that amount of money. So, this now, before I continue, first of all, this is how people end up going on loss streaks, because think of it as tilt, really. Like, it's basically tilt. Once you are on the premise of losing, and you're in the mental frame of losing, you want to recover it, and it also affects your ability to perform. That's why tilt creates more and more losses in even a skill-based game on the ladder, when you think of video gamers, right? Okay. And or gamblers, like, a lot of the time, you when you imagine the gambler that destroys themselves, they keep on betting because they feel that they have to recover what they've lost. Okay, next, I have the following example they brought up, which is, they asked a bunch of doctors if they had two options with a medical plan or whatever. Option 1, you save 200 people. Option 2, you have a 1 in 3 chance of saving 600 people, or a 0% chance of saving and a 2 out of 3 chance of saving 0 people. It's under the framework of either you save 200 people, or you risk not saving 200 people to have a chance of saving 600 people. I think it was 76% of doctors, or 78%? 72% of doctors wanted to save 200 people, even though mathematically they're the same, because they're under the framework that if they choose option B, there's a 2 in 3 chance of losing the saving of 200 people. So the precondition is that you have 200 and that you're losing the 200 if you fail. They reframe the same question, which is to say 600 people are going to die. If we go with option A, we can prevent 200 of them from dying, and 400 people dies. Wait, no. So no. If we go with option A, 400 people dies, and if we go with option B, then 2/3 of the time 600 people die, and 1/3 of the time 0 people die. So mathematically, it's the same. The responses were completely different. Now, 78% of the people said they should go with plan B, which is to say, take the risk. Because now the premise is we lose 400, and we can take a 1 in 3 chance of saving those 400, or a 2 out of 3 chance of losing more. And when they frame it this way, when you have the premise being that you have already lost and there's a small chance of recouping your losses, the majority of people take the risky option. So that is to say, when you have risk, and here's the best part about this is that these two are rationally equal. But we can actually extend this to say, even if they weren't rationally equal, it wouldn't actually affect the outcome that much, because they're not actually calculating based on the EV of number of people saved, or else it would be roughly 50-50 if they were. So here's the thing. It's not actually based on the rationality of the options. So if you are to say that maybe it was a 30% instead of 33%, I don't think the results will change that much. So when you have the premise of loss, you make more irrational decisions. And I think the reason for this, maybe biologically, is to say, if you are already on the premise of loss, that is to say, and you take a step back to cut your losses, your situation probably just gets worse and you don't really reproduce, maybe. And you end up dying eventually because survival is harsh. So you maybe say you go out to look for let's say you were hunting. You go out to look for a deer. Okay, you say, well, it's nighttime and I could go back, or I could double down and keep looking for the deer. It took me a while. I can either double down or go home hungry with no food. So maybe the kind of person who went home eventually just didn't find deer the next day and died out, and the other person eventually found the deer. I don't know how it works. Maybe it's something like that. I have no idea. But maybe it's but anyways, we tend to double down. And so in this case, when we have gambling situations, it is generally irrational to double down in the face of loss. Whereas maybe biologically it was beneficial to double down because it was even more rational to double down back then. Who knows? So here's a quote from the book. They were so determined to avoid any option associated with loss that they were willing to risk losing everything. So in the first framing, option 2 is associated with loss, and they avoided it. In the second framing, option 1 is associated with loss, and option 2 is you risk losing everything, but you might avoid loss. You might avoid the option associated with loss. Okay, so these are all of the examples. I can't believe it took me almost 30 minutes. I actually thought this was going to be short today because I thought there wasn't much to cover, but well, I didn't upload the past couple days, so whatever. So here's what I think it is to take away from it. Maybe. Don't think in the frame of potential gain, of what could be, of what if the best case scenario happens, of daydreams, fantasyland, and fanciful dreams. Because what happens is that it frames that thing as already yours, and whatever happens is downhill from there. It's loss. And then you get irrational and you gamble because you feel that you've lost something because of the discrepancy between, lo and behold, expectation and reality. If you think about the gambler, in the case of Deal or No Deal, who rejects the banker's offer, he has the expectation of receiving more money if he rejects it. And reality says, well, you took a gamble. And, well, now your expectation will not be met. And now you have this gap. And this gap is where loss is created. Because he wasn't actually losing anything that was his. He was losing the expectation of getting more money. That was created based on a fantasy. Maybe it was it was more probable to happen than not happen. But I'll get back to the rationality of that, first of all. So, yeah. So don't think of what could be true, because it frames the best case scenario as something that is already yours, and anything short of it as your loss. Something that you lost, something that reality took away from you, which also creates victimhood. Whatever. Ignore all that. Think in the frame of the present, what is already true, what you want to be true, and what is going to make what you want to be true. Like, what is best at making that true. And so here's the thing. When you look at I'm going to talk about the example here. So let's say you have there's 5 chests with $1 in it, and 4 chests with $1 in it, and 1 chest with $500,000 in it. And the banker offers you $80,000. Well, the EV of continuing is 1 in 5 for $500,000. So the EV is $100,000. But if you look at that differently, let's say if you got $80,000, that would be an 8. If you continue, you might make $100,000. Let's say that's an 8.5. You might make $120,000. Let's say that's a 9. Let's say you make $200,000. Maybe that's a 9.5, and you make $500,000. That's a 10. Now you go, okay, but $500,000 is like more than 6 times $80,000. Why does that only go from an 8 to a 9? 8 to a 10. Yeah, I mean, I'd be really happy if I got $500,000, but I wouldn't be 6 times happier than if I got $80,000. But if I got $80,000 and then went for a 80% chance of getting, an 8.5, a 9, a 9.5, or 100, or a 20% chance of getting a 0. I'm talking about like emotion, right? Like how happy it would make me. Or in this case, probably even like -8. Well, the EV is now no longer mathematical on the numbers. It's based on the EV of my happiness. And if you look at it this way, it is much more rational to take 80,000, even if the monetary EV is 100,000. Now, obviously, these people aren't calculating like this, and I wouldn't calculate it like this. I'm just using these numbers to express my point. I would just say, well, if I was unlucky, it would hurt. It would make me feel so much worse than the marginal gains I would have in happiness. Is I think the most rational way to put it, without doing math, without using any math. And the point is it like, would you do it? I mean, if I said you had because as I said, we tend to avoid loss, and there's reason for that. And I'm not going to go into the numbers because it's a waste of time. I'm pretty sure it's pretty clear how it works. But these people didn't even look at it as a potential. They didn't even look at the outcome of loss and how much it would impact them. Anyways. I had another example that I wanted to mention, but I forgot it while I was talking nonsense about my mention about the EVs. Actually, the reason I mentioned it was actually because I was addressing the book. The book was saying how the banker always offers an inferior option and how you know, logically it's reasonable to not take it. Well, I was actually disagreeing with the book because I don't think you should rationally look at the EVs mathematically from a economic standpoint, because the benefits financially to getting a windfall starts off really high, and getting 6 times more money once you already have a windfall isn't actually 6 times the benefit. Not that it's not greatly beneficial, but if you think about the actual tangible change to your day-to-day life, it's not like it helps a lot, but like diminishing returns. It's just diminishing returns of free money. So don't frame it as potential gain in the idea that you focus on what is possible, like the optimal outcome, because then you create like everything from there is going to create the gap between expectation and reality, which is something I actually came up with while I was talking about it. I don't have that in my notes. I didn't think about it while I was reading, and I didn't think about it while I was taking notes, but I thought about that when I was talking about it. And, well, yeah, so my example, again, comes from Tesla, because that was when I made the shift in my action, going from what I was doing to taking actions on the basis of improving results rather than chasing these dopamine built circuits for these outlier situations, and believing that it was a pattern that is true, which is to say it wins games. I believe that if I played this deck, it wins games, because when I played the deck before and did unreasonable things to my opponent, whenever the stars aligned, it was like I landed 10 basketball hoops in a row, or I had hot hands, as the fans called it in the book. But it is simply not true. Let's say winning a game with Slayscout was like a streak of 5, and the players believe that if you have a streak of 3, you're more likely to land your 4th shot than if you were to land the first shot. And I believe that if I had made it to turn 5, I was more likely to win. You know, turn 5 with a certain board position, I was more likely to win than starting a new game, which wasn't even true. Like, I didn't actually make it closer to my goal. I still have the land hoop 5 as an independent event, land hoop 4, and land hoop 5 as independent events. There were independent events. So I made the transition from this, just getting fueled by this memory of like a couple games where it worked, you know, like the couple of streaks that went long, and transition into, well, just because I have a streak of 3 does not mean I'm more likely to land hoop number 4.